Hello, welcome to the show. This is Ashikia Jamu on Jams Radio. On the Black Light Show, we talk about different topics. Today's topic is going to be about same planet, different world. And what do we mean by that? That people live on the same planet at the same time, they operate in different worlds. Now, when you look at that and examine that, take for instance, if we were to say the color blue, and we would say, now what color is the sky? Most people would say blue. Myself, I would say is actually clear, and a reflection of that comes from the ocean when the sun hits that. But that's just because I learned that from science. But other than that, I was always told that the sky was blue, like most of everyone else that's out there. Now, when we talk about different worlds, you could look at it from a spiritual perspective. Most people have the most people follow the main religions, we'll say, as Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. Now, when you look at that to today's world, most people incorporate their religious beliefs into everyday life. And some people operate that way as well. So when we look at ourselves and we look at what's really going on in the world, from politics to your everyday life, your daily activities, from your kids to your job. So that's what we look at when we talk about same planet in different worlds. Now, when we examine that a little bit more in depth, now we all live on the same planet and we all think different. Now, and that goes to traffic. When you're driving down the street, you might see someone run a red light because they are actually operating in a different world. They're not paying attention to what's going on. They're not seeing or even aware of that there was a red light for them to stop. And then, therefore, there might be a traffic accident or maybe not. But when you talk about the same planet and operate in different worlds, how can we all come together in the same mindset? Now, when you look at social behavior, they add to what we are doing in our society. Now, when you look at it, they're now promoting men wearing dresses, or they might be promoting another hairstyle that men might just tag on to because someone famous is doing it. Now you have to go back and look to say, like, well, who is paying for these things? Who's paying for these actors or artists, or we would say athletes, to parade around in maybe a dress or maybe not? Or maybe they might have a hairstyle. They might be green, purple, orange, red. But what is driving that? So what we look at and examine is those worlds that has been created by, we can't really say the government, but it's actually the industry. And the industry is a company. And it creates worlds in people's minds. Like we could look at religion to be an industry. Now, that has created worlds in people's minds that they believe that there is an actual devil walking the earth, or there might be a God walking the earth in their mind. But that's what they were told as it was written. Just because of the written doesn't mean that it's true. But if that's what you believe, that's what you believe. And that's the world that you may live in. It's just like some people might say there's angels protecting them, or it might just be the perfect timing that that particular incident didn't happen at that moment. That's what have protected them. Or it might be a guardian angel. Who really knows? Um, but moving on, when we talk about the different worlds and the different aspects of what's really going on in people's minds, we try to get into the psychosis, meaning that some people have psyched themselves out, the psyche. You psych yourself in certain instances. There's certain things people have to just think about and grow out of it. um, when you was a kid, you were taught about Santa Claus until you got to a certain age and realized that it's really your parents that's buying everything, or your parents just simply told you that I purchased everything and there is no Santa Claus because that's just a myth. But then we carry on the other mythologies in terms of our religious beliefs. And that's when the line twists, when you have your religious belief intertwined with the reality. And or you might have something put into your head of sort of like sometimes hip hop videos. As an example, you might see hip hop videos depicting women as super sexy with the bodies and everything. And that is true to a lot of women. They are sexy and beautiful at the same time. That's not every woman. So when we as men see that on that video, at times that puts that in our world to those are the type of women that we're looking for. Just as if when we're looking at some of the Black community, when you see women with straight hair and then you try to figure out, well, where does this come from? But it actually comes from the propaganda that's been put out there for ages, or that certain groups and certain people are better than other people when in actuality we are all the same. No one has any other ability better than the next person except for arithmetic, timing, or maybe athletics, but that just their genetics that just makes that happen. But that's the world that we live in, that we've created on this planet when it comes to the propaganda that's fed to us. Say, for instance, if they were talking about the Haitian people and why is it that people are asking America to do something about it, when you really should ask, why isn't it the African countries, the diasporan countries, help their own people out or our people out? Because I am a Black person and I represent that as well. So it's my people as all people. But as a Black person, I must represent myself because some of the things that we face in that particular spectrum or that particular world that people represent. So when you're talking about certain groups like the KKK, which is pretty much dying out, or people might have the concept of a white supremacy. Me, myself, I don't believe in any supremacy or anyone supreme over me. It might be judgments that people might take that might hold me back at that moment, but it's just that moment in time. And maybe I need to learn more before I say that, oh, well, I'm just held back by a particular group or something, or maybe I need to join certain organizations to strengthen myself or give myself more leverage into what I'm looking at. And sometimes it's my perspective that really what I need to check. And maybe that's what you need to check as well, because sometimes our reality is not our perspective, or our perspective is not really our reality, meaning that that could be warped in the sense that what we created. Um, Most problems in our life outside of something that is tragic that we had no control over, but most things in our lives are things that we created. Say, for instance, the bills, all the bills we created because those are the bills that we obtained on our own. So when you look at these different aspects, the different worlds, or the different mindsets, have you, that we've intertwined with ourselves, and as you get older, you tend to put more of those worlds and mesh them all in so it becomes a blend. When you start to look at the perspective of, let's go back to the rap game, when we're looking at women depicted a certain way, when we're looking at what is a rap artist, should everybody have the diamonds in their mouth or diamond chains, gold chains, or should they represent a regular everyday person with real skill, a real flow and real talent? So that's what it comes down to, the worlds and what's really there. It's not to say that a lot of people that's in the industry of rap and hip hop right now doesn't have the talent or the skill, but what it is showing you that it's more flash based than it is talent or skill based. So when we're looking at that perspective, that imagery paints a world, paints a picture in people's mind of what is to be. I'll give you a simple example. I've had the privilege to be in a lot of different communities, and I once lived in a suburban area. And in that suburban area, um, one of the neighbors, I'll say, came and asked me, like, "Hey, so what do you do for a living? Um, do you rap?" And then I'm like, I laughed it off, but then that was the stereotype from the propaganda that was put before them, is that that's what they expect of Black people outside of being a business person, which I am, outside of being an ordinary person with a job that's just out there to do the best that they could do for their family. So those are the things that we have to come across when we look at the worlds that we've made amongst ourselves when we add those stereotypes. Um, I've once had the pleasure of having an Asian person, I'll say Chinese, as my friend, as well as Indian people as my friend. And some of the thoughts that you have because of the world that you've made up, maybe it's been from cartoons you've seen, or maybe it's been just chitter chatter or gossip that you hear amongst your community about another group and other people. But then when you meet those people, you understand those people, you realize like, wow, they're just like me. Y'all listen to the same music. Some of the foods are similar, not all the time, but because of culture. And that defines us, and that's what makes us different too, because people come from different cultures, we have different languages, but at the same time, when you boil it down, we're like all the same. So those worlds we created really are the mindsets that twist and turn of your reactions of what you're going to do on a day-to-day basis. It's just like, for instance, we'll look at slavery. A lot of people say that we should get reparations for slavery, which I totally agree. Because when you look at anybody else who's been held back the most, for what reason? Well, the reason would be for economics. And you have to understand this on an economic platform, that you have certain groups of people that are European that look at them as losing ground in America, which they have really already lost ground when you look at the totality of the different groups and races by the numbers. So when you add the Hispanic numbers and the African American numbers or the Black American numbers to that, those decimate the actual white numbers. Plus the other groups, maybe it be islanders or Chinese or not Chinese, we'll say, but maybe the people from India as well as other parts of Asia. So when you add all those groups together, totally we outnumber them as white people. And then you have to look at the world perspective. Now, white people do, as Europeans, do run business. On the other hand, we as of Black people or melanated people, however you want to put it, we have the spectrum of the world, because the majority of the world is some shape, form, or fashion of color or shade of that. So when you look at that and you look at the strength in that by the numbers and by the size on the world scale, yes, we as a people do have the power. It's just that we've allowed the European construct to work its way through our reality. Coming from slavery and a little bit beyond slavery, when you look at how governments are made. Um, a lot of people don't know, simply the Greeks and the Romans, they had a welfare system. They had a welfare system to help the people out, to put things together, to make things happen as you deal with the poor and things like that. So those systems were needed because these people controlled a lot of territory. And if you look at history, which is written by other individuals from their perspective of them conquering, them winning, then in that world perspective, then they had to take care of a lot of people as they occupied a lot of territory. And when you look at when you look at it from a scope more in depth, to say like that is quite amazing when you say the Greeks or the Romans, such a small group of people are able to occupy a large amount of area. No different than when we come to a time to say the British rule, from them really being an island. When you look at them on the map, with them controlling so much of the world when it comes down to business or even language, how most business worldwide is spoken in English. So we can learn Mandarin Chinese, which is good when it comes down to business, or we can learn Spanish, which is good when it comes down to doing business in the Americas, because that is the broadest language spoken in the Americas. Now, we'll go more in depth into worlds. Here in America, we are taught that America, United States of America, is the best country in the world. In most shapes or forms, it is, because you have to look at it. If we're complaining about our government in terms of the way it is, imagine another government and imagine what everybody else is going through. So we have to look at that world and where they're coming from. And it's ironic that you have a lot of people that want to leave America. And on the other hand, you have more people that want to come to America due to the fact of them looking at their world as being worse or not good enough, or whatever reasons that they're coming to the United States. But I'll tell you the truth, that is that is a joke, because the real reality is that you have to do the same things wherever you are. And the way that the world is structured, that everything almost costs the same when you start looking at your lifestyle and want to live another place. It pretty much costs you the same almost to live somewhere else as it costs you in America, depending on how you live. Now, if you poor is poor anywhere. It's just relying on what is there. But outside of that, when you look at the middle class and you start looking at the upper class, and when you look at class itself, there is only two classes. There's middle and upper class. There's no poor class. No one looks at it and say, well, you have poor class, or you're a poor ass person, poor class person. You're a poor ass person, but not a poor class person. You could be middle class, and they got rid of the upper middle class. So it's either your middle class having a little and struggling through the day to day, working just as if you work any place else, or you have the rich who can afford things, but when you really look at it, they're really struggling too. They just have a lot of bills, and more bills than what you can imagine. Just imagine paying $12,000 or $10,000 a month just to live in a big house that at the end of the day, you're paying taxes and your family has to pay for it forever, unless you do some savvy moves of putting it in a trust or non-profiting it out, or doing different things with it in terms of to make money off of it. But other than that, it's really not a asset at all. It's more of an expense for you. So live the life you want to live. Live in the world you want to live. But there is a planet that we all live on. And and sometimes people talk about this, let's say, global warming, which can be true in a sense. Look how we've treated the planet over the years. It's really not us, but it's the people before us that's really stripped the planet, created acid rain, and all those things, but that's what it is, and that's where we live right now. And when it comes down to capitalism, the whole world is on the capitalistic, um, let's say, structure. Who doesn't want to have money? But the money could be the thing that is destroying the planet and pretty much us when you look at it in a more in-depth way, because money is so intrinsic into us that is actually in our genetics that we love money so much. Uh, it messes with our mood. And when you have money, you feel great. When you don't have money, you feel down, depressed a little bit. Most of the time, us as men, we love to spend money on things that really means something or really have some value. Most people, like my wife, likes to spend things on that has, I guess, value to her at that moment. But that's just how she lives in her world and how I live in my world as a guy. Um, Moving forward, it's just looking at how we could all work together on this planet, which is going to be a little bit tough because everyone has a little world that they grew up in. And you look at the environments that they grew up in, and we all come from different environments because we all grew up in different homes, maybe on the same block, but it's a different house. When you go outside, meet one of your friends, they're talking about something different than what you're talking about, but we could be talking about the same thing, just looking at it from a different point of view. Um, but that's just what we live in society. Um, Now, how would you feel if you was living in my world where you're constantly looking at gaining, trying to pay bills like everybody else, but your bills get bigger because you're looking at commercial property, you're looking at how can you constantly make gains, pay for salaries, as well as pay for your own family and keep that going, other than just getting a job and working your, I guess, ass off so you could just get some shit on credit and pay for them every day. It's two different worlds, two different mindsets. So every day, got to get up, look at how I can gain, obtain, and get more. And go get it attitude, because no one's going to give me anything that I don't go out there and get. But at a job, you just go and get your paycheck, and it's every day could be the same. It could be different depending on what you do. And that makes your world. Um, I don't know how fun that is anymore because I've been there, done that, and really going out there on the hunt, like I guess a man from how we were built uh, feels good. Sometimes you don't eat, sometimes you do eat. And when you do eat, you eat good. And when you don't eat, it makes you go out there and work harder and work stronger, because not all the time the road that you travel is the road that you're going to really stay on. You're going to always veer off to another direction, because nothing on the planet is really straight line. When you live on a ball, it's a circle. So we're not living on a flat planet. If people do believe that, well, you're free to believe that, and that's your world. But when we go past that, this planet is circular, just like the sun is circular, and everything else is circular except for rocks and asteroids that's out there, or meteorites that hits the planet or hits planets or the moon or whatever that's out there. But as you can see, the moon is even circular. It's not flat. But that's the world that some people actually live in, because they're looking at a map that is flat. So you could believe that if you like. But moving on, as we say, Um, let's look at how we could say today's, I'll say slavery, or someone could say, how could that exist today? Well, it could exist in multiple ways today. Um, if you go to, let's say, the Philippines and bring someone back and have them living at your place, and you're feeding them, but you're clothing them, but you're not paying them. Is that not slavery? So that is slavery. If you're not getting paid the right wage, that's slavery. But at the same time, what I had to realize is that in life, some things that we allow to happen to us, we let that happen to us without having the strength inside, going day in, day out. That's how it was at work, going day in, day out, taking it from management or taking it from a boss. And you're sitting back and you're like, well, what you do is not equivalent to what I do, because without me, your job would be nothing. And really, management, why don't you step up and help instead of sitting back and just watching me go through my day to day struggles depending on the job. So just look at it from that perspective, that life isn't always green on the other side. And there's a funny saying that I've heard multiple times when we're talking about different worlds on the same planet. There's a saying that your destiny, or you were born for a particular reason. And then if you think about that, you say like, well, so you're saying that I was born to work for someone, or I was born to own this business? I don't really subscribe to that, because I really look at it that you create that avenue that you want to go down. No different if you decide to be with a couple of your friends and you decide to have a drink. That is all your choice. You don't have to, amongst the feeling, amongst there really is a peer pressure when it comes to your decision. It's down to your choice. Is that you want to do it or you don't want to do it at the end of the day. Um, but most of the time, we go ahead and do it because we don't want to look silly or odd in front of our friends. So we just agree to do it, whether it is stupid in our heads or not. But that's how we lived in the past. But as you get older, you start really doing you and really believing in you. And that's really what it boils down to, as believe in you, believe in yourself, and don't say, oh, well, I'm just walking down this road because I was born to do this, because whatever you say you were born to do today, what if that doesn't exist tomorrow? Some people were in, let's say, the landline telephone business. Today, we're in cell phones, wireless. So if you don't transition and you stay still in that same world, then therefore you may die out, or you just may be old. So it is good to stay in the present time, in the present things that matter only to you, because what really matters only to you, whether you like whatever color it is. Like, I wear black because that's Jams Radio, and that's what I represent. I represent um, the totality and the scope that covers everything. When you look into the sky, it's really black canvas, and everything else there is on that canvas. So when you look into the depths of things, how deep can you go? It's like a black hole, the abyss. And black holes all light. There's all spectrums of light inside of black when you start really looking in depth into it. And that's why some people are like, well, how can white come from black? Because white is in black somehow when you really look at it from a spectrum, because you really wouldn't see it if it's a light hits it, because it's black. Now, moving on, as we say, back to the topic, and the topic is same planet, different worlds. So don't live your world in a tornado where you've just gathered all these things that really doesn't matter when you start really analyzing it and really looking at it, because only thing that really matters is really how you doing every day, good mindset, good health, making money so then you could take care of yourself and your family. But outside that, just really find you, find that part of you that really is you, because now we live in a time that people are really quitting their jobs because they're looking at there's a better life than going to work for 8 hours while another person, the thought is that the other person gets wealthy, but the way that business is made is that you really have to work hard, not hard, or you really have to spend a lot of money in order to get some of that wealth, because it's about brand building and brand recognition, and people knowing your name and knowing who you are and who you are and what you do. And when you look at corporations, it's not like name dropping like most people look at it. Like you meet people and they're so quick to name, to drop a name. Oh, well, I know such and such. I know Matt Johnson. I know Michael Jordan. I know this person. I know that person. The thing is who cares, because what business are they doing with you? And if they were doing business with you, you really wouldn't be name dropping. You would just say, "Hey, I got this going on. I got that going on." But most people live in that world where name dropping really means something to them. But it really comes down to what business is people doing with you. As my day to day struggles is to work with people that are doing um, higher levels of business that I am doing, and how can I learn from them, and as well as make gains from what I've learned from them. And as you meet people with money, they'll bring you along and educate you as well in different aspects and avenues on how to make money. Not necessarily that's your world in on this planet, because not what everyone do is something that you could do. Um, I have a lot of friends that do all types of businesses, and they make good money at times. And sometimes I have my own envy to say, like, man, I wish I was making that money right now. But then again, how they do what they do is how they score each day. And I have my own method of scoring and dealing with my challenges and my day-to-day ways of making money. So they have to do the same thing, because just because they're scoring doesn't mean that they're winning. So you have to look at that. Just we have to look at that in that world too. Just because you are scoring doesn't mean that you're going to win the game. Just because you have a big house on the hill, just because you have a Bentley, just because you have all these bills that you're paying doesn't mean that you're winning the game. Because when it's all said and done, when you get older, are you going to have finances or any type of capital to carry on, because you don't know if Social Security will be there, or whatever you're doing in business right now, you might not be putting Social Security aside. And at the same time, it's not like they're paying anything that's really going to keep you up or afloat. That's just a measly, maybe at most, what, 1,500 if you're doing good, or if you're doing real well, maybe 2,500 a month for a limited amount of years. So you have to really look at that and look at, well, how can you set money aside, whether it's onshore, offshore, or you got to think about you in your future, and also your family if you don't make it, because we're not promised the rest of the day and we're not promised tomorrow. So with that said, let's keep it moving. Um, well, thank you very much for your time. Bless you. And thank you for watching a segment of the Black Light Show. And we're going to give you some more. So stay in tune, get the lights up, hit the subscribe, and just get this baby going, man. Let's keep it rolling. Jams Radio. Here we go.